We're set to go here. My name is Goddard with Rekord, and we're about to dive in a comprehensive video review of Steve Kimpton and his spec race Atom here at our favorite track, Apex Motor Club. So we're going to kick it off with a little ride along with Steve. We definitely wanted to acknowledge his progress in this car. He's gotten very, very quick in this car. And with this little video overview here, we're looking for maybe a second, a few tenths here and there. As we'd mentioned, Steve's getting really, really quick, and we're gonna find him that time he's looking for. So let's go for a wild ride with Steve, and then when we get back around, we're gonna start dissecting Apex Motor Club. And Steve's driving one corner at a time. So here we go. Plenty quick here. Fifth gear down into fourth. We're in turn one here at Apex Motor Club. This track is so fun. It's fast. It's smooth. We're diving down into turn two here. Looking really good, Steve, up into turn three. And now we're leading on to a pretty fast and long straightaway. And the surprise here at the end of this straightaway, and one of my personal favorites here at Apex, is this really, really cool chicane that they have. And as you guys know, a lot of my friends know, folks know that I love chicanes. I'm a big fan of Watkins Glen and Daytona, for example. This right here reminds me of that, where you can really attack some curbs. You know, as Steve was there, get two wheels up in the air. It's just a ton of fun. So big shout out to Apex on that one. This is down into turn four here, which brings us on to the second long straightaway with a nice upshift, sweeping right-hander with a pretty long straight here. We're into the triple digits down into turn six, which again is a ton of fun. This is fourth gear. This is a long, lingering turn that requires discipline. You can go through here pretty quick. And it dumps us down into turn seven, which is very, very technical. There's probably 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7 different ways you could take this corner. We're going to dive into that one. Nice catch, Steve. You can see that our drifting school's been paying off there with these quick hands. And now we're heading down into turn 8, 9, 10, and 11. Which is really fun. It's busy. Beautiful job. So that's a quick lap here at Apex. We're going to do a pretty comprehensive overview of Steve's drive right here. I think Steve had mentioned here we're about the 155 range on lap time in this lap. So we're going to rewind it all the way back to the front here. Just to kind of go through some notes on this day, we know Steve had a different tire with a slightly different aspect ratio. We were coming to grips with that. I think that aside, he was doing really well. But again, here we go. We're going to dive into the lap. So this is turn 12 here at Apex, and it's quick. I know Steve's in fifth gear here. He's hyper focused. There's a lot of things happening. Focused energy and focused elevated vision is critical through here. There's so much happening. You got a guardrail to your left. You have a corner coming up where you really can't see down to your apex or your exit. So there's a lot of things you're preparing for. So we're in fifth gear through here. What I'm looking at, I'm trying to catch out of my peripheral this Apex logo at the start-finish line. I know they've put some braking boards on the Armco barrier to the right here. The way my eyes work, or the way most drivers, I would assume, you're looking right here. You're planning for this. And what I'm really trying to pick up for, as far as references go, is this Apex start-finish line logo that they have here. So one small observation I have through here, you know, having watched this video a few times, is just Steve's braking, where he's rolling off the brake pedal, and the amount of speed he's carrying down to the apex. So as you listen here, you'll note that Steve is on the gas just a little too early. And what that tells us is that there was something left on the table, that you can carry more momentum down towards the apex. Maybe right here you could brake with a little less brake pedal pressure, or get off the brake a little sooner so that you can roll that momentum down to the apex. And as far as a reference point for braking, I'm really trying to pick up literally this Apex logo that's at the start-finish line. So let's listen to this right here. You can hear the throttle coming on a little too soon. The only way that we can get rid of that is to throw a little more bravery on the table, let go of the brake pedal a little sooner, and just focus on carrying momentum all the way down to your apex. As far as the line, I think it looks great. Where Steve's hands are, looking at the lean angle of the helmet, everything looks really superb to me. So line is good until we get to right about here. One small observation again, I could hear a little bit of modulation on the throttle. If we could find a way to get rid of that so that you can build your momentum sooner, that would help. But right here I see a little bit of real estate left on the table. If you could track out all the way to the white line and open that wheel sooner, it just widens that arc, and it might give us a tenth or so right there, just to get those wheels to stop scrubbing across the track. Just open up the wheel, and that'll help a bit. So we're in fourth gear right here. We're going to be down into third gear for turn 2. Nice smooth downshift. Where we're turning in here, I think, is beautiful. I've been able to watch Steve from the clubhouse, which is over here to the left. This is one of these corners that he can do in his sleep. So I think right here, everything is really, really, really good. One small observation here, and this is good. What Steve is doing here is perfectly fine. I've explored myself with getting up on this curb in various cars. It doesn't really help too much in this Ariel Atom. It's something I would avoid. So the exit that Steve has taken here is just spot on. So stay in third gear. I've noticed in some of these laps a temptation to want to go up to fourth. I think that's wasted time. So just focus on staying in third gear here. On the brake, nice throttle application down at the apex. Up into fourth gear here, and we're going to head up into fifth gear right here. So I'm just going to let it roll out here and pause maybe for 1 second as we get down into the braking zone. Apex has 2 straightaways. We want to make sure that we're taking big deep breaths and that we're trying to find places to relax a little bit. Apex is pretty busy, it's dynamic and fun. There's 2 places that we can really focus on that. It's this straightaway and then the one that goes from turn 4 down into turn 6. So right here, just make sure that we're breathing. Because we're getting up for and preparing for a really fun section. This chicane right here is so much fun in my opinion. I know that Steve has been braking pretty close to the number 2 marker on the left side here. They've put braking boards on the arm curb area. What I love and appreciate about the staff at Apex is that they're always on top of things and they're thinking. They've since laid these blue boards down on the left side of the track that really help as well as far as picking up reference points. You can see one right there. That is a phenomenal idea. I think that's really, really cool. So where Steve is braking right here, I think is pretty good. In our little driver's briefing, he'd mentioned that he was somewhere between a 3 and 2. It looks like here he was closer to the 2. That's pretty late in an Ariel Atom. I think there's a little bit more left on the table there. But the real key to the chicane, and what I wanted to point out, we're down into third gear here. I would say that that's this is good. This is aggressive use of the curbing. It's a slower section of the track. I think it's okay to use the curbing there. No secret to a chicane like this. The straighter the line, the faster you go. I think if that cone could be moved, Steve would take a little more, as would I. But what we really want to acknowledge here is your braking. So if you're braking between the 3 and the 2, that you're holding onto that brake pedal and carrying brake pedal pressure all the way down through here. You're still on the brakes through the chicane to almost this point. If we find that we're having to pick up the throttle back out here, it's really an indication of us braking too early. So you want to make sure that you're braking aggressively in as straight a line as possible, all the way down through the chicane to somewhere around here to where we're picking up the throttle again. So just use that as a little friendly indicator of where am I braking. If you're on the throttle too soon, we're braking too early. Pretty simple. So here's the inside of this bus stop or this chicane. There is a cone out here on the right. It's out there for reference. I've seen some drivers go for it. It just doesn't feel to me like we need to go that far out there. I typically try to stay 1 to 2 car widths away from it to the left, as Steve is right here. So car placement, we feel is spot on right here. The reason we like it is it's just a better line as we come through here. If we're over here turning, it feels to us that we're looking over at these mountains over here, when in reality Steve right here, he's got his eyes focused more adequately through the exit of the chicane. So I think this is all really, really good. Nice job. Friendly use of curb right here. I remember in reviewing this, there's a little bit of a throttle lift right about here, which is just us being a little hard on Steve, trying to find those few tenths that he'd paid for. You want to be committed right here. I think this line is good. Just know that that little security lift right about here is unnecessary, but you'll hear it right here. That little one right there, if we can get rid of that, that adds more time to that lap time we're looking for. So we want to mitigate that. One other little observation here is if we could track out a little further out to the white line right here, maybe just get up on the curb a little bit, because it's a fairly slow section, it's third gear. That's going to help open radiuses up and gain in mile an hour. So if doing that gives us an extra mile an hour, why not? We're looking for a big lap time here. Up to fourth gear. And now we're braking and going down into third gear here for turn 4. So one little friendly observation for Steve, and knowing that he's looking for a big lap time, is where are we braking here? I think where he's braking is good at the number 2. The biggest thing is I think we're turning in way too early here. And the reason why you don't want to is this is a tight corner, but we know that it leads onto a long straight, and how we come off this corner is critical. You know, in many cases we've really tried to stress that you got to build racetracks backwards, find the 2 longest straights, and really address the corner that's leading on to these 2 longest straights. You know, that's turn 3, and here turn 4. So what I just want to quickly address is where we're turning in. So this is where I believe you should be turning in. Right when this left side tire gets to this cone, start turning into the corner. These skid marks right here are also further proof of what we're trying to say here. This is from some Formula 3 cars from Global Racing Group and some various radicals and, you know, some pretty high level competition cars. These skid marks are where the right sides have been locking up, because the right side's going to get really light going into this corner. So right here, these skid marks, again, are from the right sides of these cars. If Steve could just put his right side tire right on these skid marks and kind of focus, not necessarily focus, but use that cone out of his peripheral vision to just try and turn in at that cone to where these right side tires are on those skid marks, it's going to help a ton. And you will find an extra mile or 2 an hour going down into turn 6. So that's going to help. So here's turn 4 right here. Pretty good stuff as far as getting down to the apex. That later turn in might help shift the back of the car around a little bit so that you can get on the throttle sooner. It absolutely will. So, you know, hopefully when Steve watches this video, he'll know what we're looking at here and what we need him to do. So this is coming out of turn 4, up into 4th gear, up to 5th. So this is turn 5. It's fast. I was feeling experimental one day and got up on this curb pretty hard in an Ariel Atom, and it just did not like it. It just about ripped the wheel out of my hand. So where Steve is right now is perfect. And as far as the exit of turn 5, I think this is good. In some really high horsepower stuff, 700 horsepower with big amounts of torque, turbos, boost, if you will, just the amount of power these cars have, you'll want to go all the way out to this curving right here. But with this Ariel Atom, we're still going at a high rate of speed here. We'll be up into the triple digits pretty quickly. I think where Steve is exiting here is pretty good. And as we head down into turn 6, we know there are braking boards on the Armco barrier. They've also put these cones out as reference. So you'll see this number 2 cone right here. This is essentially where we want to be braking. Let's see where Steve is braking. Just a little bit past it, which is good. Pick up that number 2 out of your peripheral. If you're braking around it and can back it down a little bit and go past it, that's going to help a ton. But this is going to be a 4th gear turn, and you'll see a cone just past the 1 right about here. This is where you want to be turning in. There's an apex cone right around here, pretty far around there. Ideally we want to be aiming for, but you want to be disciplined and not throw it in too early here because you want to carry your momentum. This is a fast corner, and again, there's a lot of momentum to be had in 4th gear here. So you want to turn in, wait for it, be disciplined, and then start feeding on the throttle almost to full throttle, down to full throttle at the apex. of turn 6 here. So now we're tracking out. We're going to go to the top of 4th gear. Nice downshift into 3rd. So this is turn 7, and this is one of these corners that gives drivers the fits. A lot of folks have said, man, this corner is really difficult. It stresses me out, and we all start laughing because it's intended to do so. It's very, very difficult. And with that said, it's a lot of fun. I might take it differently. Steve's taking it differently. We've got 20 other amazing instructors at Track Rekord that might take it differently. Andy might have a different line. But here's essentially what I'm looking at. These skid marks, again, are where the Formula 3 cars, and again, some very accomplished drivers in some high caliber horsepower cars have left these lines, these black marks. This is where the insides, again, have locked up. So I'm typically somewhere between where Steve is now and where these skid marks are. So I'm always trying to be right about here. But where Steve is, I think is good. He's gotten himself down into 3rd gear. The real key is discipline, and you got to tell yourself, I can't turn in early at all, because your apex at this point is almost over here. It's 180 degrees away. It's a pretty neat corner. I know some drivers are using these trees right here as a reference point. I'm not necessarily looking at trees right now. My eyes are elevated, but I'm just trying to build this thing in my head. I try to pick up on skid marks. A lot of this is muscle memory and just keeping an eye of where I am in relationship to this curve right here. But the key is to stay way out here and just let it come to you. The other thing is, a lot of drivers at this point just try to accelerate too soon. They're overdriving these cars. This Ariel Atom, for example, if you get on the gas way too hard, the weight transfers to the back, and it just feels to me like it picks the front end up like a wakeboard boat. And then you get this big self-induced and unnecessary understeer. You don't want that at all. You want to keep that front end planted and down and just be patient. And I'm literally saying in my head right here, mechanical grip, just waiting for the front end and just allowing it to work while we wait for our next reference point, which is right there, this cone right there. If we can line up with that and accelerate on up to this next cone, this sets us up for turn 8. So now we're turning in for turn 8. This looks pretty good here, Steve. Quick hands, nice car control. It looks like all of those days spent drifting and on the skid pad have really paid off. I definitely wanted to highlight that. The car control skills looking pretty solid there, my friend. Everything here looks good. We're down to our apex. We're up on the curve a little bit. I think curbing here is fine because it's a slow corner. This opens up the radius as we come on all the way through here to turn, this would be turn 9. A little bit more to the left might help. We're almost there, but there's a foot or two extra real estate over to the left that might help. A little bit of an upshift to 4th, that's needed. This is a pretty short little straight, but it's quick. Most cars we're shifting right here, and then we got to decide, are we going to be downshifting right here, or are we going to roll 4th gear through this corner, which would be, the turn 8, 9, 10 complex. Let's see what Steve does right here. So there's a little hesitation to downshift. I think what would work is to avoid that, stay in 4th gear, just roll your momentum through there, get up on the curbing on the inside a little bit, I think is fine. But the line here is good. Keep it in 4th gear. And then as we approach turn 11 right here, this is 10. This is where I would do the downshift to 3rd. Steve's pointed over to here. If we could stay a little bit to the left and maybe be a little bit more patient, I think this will help with that drive off of turn 11. And the thing about turn 11 is it leads us onto a straightaway. With this Ariel Atom, if we're feeling brave enough and the setup is where we want it, we can go through turn 12 flat out. So we're in 3rd, you're going to be up to 4th, up to 5th. So you want to build that up here. It feels to me that we're just a little bit early there. So maybe a little bit further to the outside is going to help. But Steve managed to gather it all back up here, down to our apex. He's on that angry throttle nice and early. There's that little bit of a rev limiter we're hearing, and I've heard that in a few other areas and some other laps here with Steve. As we'd mentioned earlier on, Steve got curious and experimental, and these are brand new tires, and as I understand, they have a slightly different aspect ratio, which would have a lot to do with some of the over revs that we're hearing. But just for the record, anytime you're hearing a lot of rev chip, just tell yourself we want to back away from that, just to where you're slightly ahead of it. Anytime you're doing a lap and you're 6 or 7 corners combined of rev chip, there's time on the table, right? So here we go. We're coming through turn 11 here at Apex. This is all really good. Steve's in 4th gear. So turn 12 here at Apex is a lot of fun. It's very, very fast. You have to be super disciplined when you go through it. There's a lot of time to be had here on the table. So we're just going to kind of back up to where we're turning in. This cone right here is perfect. We're turning in at that cone. Then we're coming on down to the inside here as our apex. We want to have one smooth wheel input from that turn in, and ideally hold the wheel in one place the whole way through this corner. Turn 12 might have 2 apexes, or you might want to call it a double apex. It might have the feeling of a stop sign, but tell yourself to make one corner out of this whole section. If you do that, it'll pay off. For many, I see this as a little bit of a mental obstacle. Tell yourself that it's one corner. Try to find one wheel input the whole way through. But with that said, they've tried to help us guide through that process. This cone right here is a good cone to kind of aim for, or a nice piece of advice or guideline to have to kind of set us up for the first part of this corner. So you want to swing on out past that cone, and then we're coming through here. You'll note here that there's more curbing on the right side. It hasn't been painted for a reason. They don't want anyone to use it, which makes total sense here. You wouldn't want to get down to that curbing at all. At this point, that curbing there doesn't exist, so pretend it's not there. What we're really looking to do is, out of our peripheral, is line ourselves up with that second large cone on the left. That helps build the second part of this corner. And again, we're still aiming to have our wheel input consistent the whole way through here. And that brings us down into the last part of turn 12, which is down to the inside. Where Steve is right here is perfect. This is textbook. So the line here is critical, and now we're going to back it all up again to the entrance to turn 12. There's a lot of time to be had here for Steve. Right here is in 4th gear. Everything's good, but I see a short shift to 5th. You'll hear it. So there's a lot of action and thunder, and then a short shift to 5th, and then there's a little bit of a brr. I know why he's doing it, is because this is such a fun and fast corner. It can be high risk. You want to be very, very patient and understand that you got to be disciplined and respectful of this corner. So I know why Steve is shifting up into 5th. If he can hang on to 4th a little longer and get up into 5th at the right place, and then hold it in 5th, there's just a lot of time to be had there. I also know that he's upshifting into 5th a little sooner because he doesn't want to upshift into 5th right here and hook the wrong gear. If you grab the wrong gear in this section of the track, as dynamic as it is and as much turning as you're doing, you're going to be pretty busy in the car. Steve would be making some pizza there. So I know that's what's going on. In this case, in a section like this, why not smoothen out your shifting? If you know your shifting is happening over half a second, do it over a second or 3/4 of a second. Just be very, very smooth and deliberate about it. Shift as though you would be shifting in a long distance endurance race in a car that's got a little bit of a suspect gearbox. Just be really analytical and deliberate about it. So that would be some advice I would have for Steve here, is just hang on to 4th a little longer. And when you get up into 5th, try to roll more momentum in 5th gear. I know this day we were experimenting with some tires. That's a given, but that's just a little observation that I've made right here. Right here, I hear throttle modulation. There's a little bit, there's a lot happening here, as we know. If we could just tip into the throttle, be a little more aggressive through here. Keep your eyes elevated. There's a lot of time to be had right here. So that would be one of the key focus areas that we would have in going back to Apex. So for you folks out there, hope you enjoyed this. I had a good time doing it. I know Andy's going to do some tomorrow with a lap in a Radical. We appreciate our fans and your support. Thank you very much.